Hey everyone, welcome back to the PAC-South podcast. Pat, it is officially March. We are getting into the tournament madness. The women's having wrapped up in most cases last weekend, men's tournaments in full swing, and some of the women's still finishing up middle of this week as well. Um, First things first, women's tournament last week, the Big East wrapped up. UConn finishes an undefeated regular season and conference tournament. Can anyone beat this UConn team? Like, I feel like we are just going to have a runaway, like kind of similar to like a decade ago, those seasons.
Yeah.
Is there anything stopping them?
Um, I think barring injury or anything kind of crazy like that, I would say no. I think this UConn team is obviously super talented, super deep. They returned a decent amount of players from last year's squad, obviously losing Paige Beckers to the WNBA draft, but it's still a really good team. And kind of from what we've seen in other conferences this year, there's not really like I'll say another truly dominant team. You know, UCLA has looked sort of so and so at times. South Carolina has had rebounding issues the past few games that almost got them against LSU, definitely got them against Texas. Texas has been inconsistent too. I mean, the second half of that game, it looked like they were in control. And then next thing you knew, South Carolina was only down like 7 points after being down 17. Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like the challengers or the field um, maybe isn't as strong as it had been the past few years, and because of that, I feel like it's not going to be a cakewalk to the title. But I feel like UConn is definitely the odds-on favorite and should be such because I do think they are kind of like a cut above the rest of these teams.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think this is kind of UConn's year, more so than last, the way that they finished last year. But I mean, just from start to finish, I feel like this is going to be one of those fairy tale seasons again for the Huskies out of the many they've had over the last 3 decades. I think the question starts to become, and if I brought this up in the podcast before, um, how much longer will Gino be there? Will he want to finish on a national title? I mean, the legacy he's had, I would assume that he would. And also, there's some other coaching jobs that could come up that UConn would be fighting against. So definitely they would want a clean cycle to make sure that they get the person they want and they doesn't turn into a bidding war with, say, like a South Carolina or a Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that could be something to watch this offseason as well. Moving over to the men's side of things, today's Thursday the 12th. Miami, Ohio loses in the MAC tournament to 17-16 UMass. They were ranked. They had an undefeated regular season. Is that enough? I mean, people were talking that this is then a bubble team or probably missing with one loss and not a conference championship. I don't think the Red Hawks should miss out on a tournament. You finish a college basketball season undefeated. Um, and whether or not those emails were true of him trying to schedule tougher non conference games and then people just ghosting him, I don't know 100% sure if he was just trying to make a point or whatever. Um, Nonetheless, they finish undefeated. Yes, you have a bad loss, really, to UMass. Like, you at least want to win one or two games in the tournament. I think they still got to be in. It kills their seeding. They're not a 4 or 5 seed by any means anymore, but I mean, they got to be a 9 or a 10. How do you look at it? Are the Red Hawks seriously in trouble?
I would say yes, they're seriously in trouble because of, let's say, like the narrative that the committee has already put out there, and the narrative that I think a lot of bracketologists, a lot of the mainstream media has sort of run with a little bit. And it's the idea that yes, Miami went 31-0. However, and then they point to the non-conference schedule, they point to the weaknesses of the MAC, things like that. And really, I think the one game that they couldn't lose to make it, let's say, like a lock, even if they lost at the MAC tournament, they're still in, was today against UMass. Because UMass, I think, was like 203 or so in like the net ranking coming in. So it's now a Q4 loss on a neutral site, and that definitely hurts things. Do I think they should be in? Absolutely. However, I do think it's going to be a little bit of a nervy selection Sunday for Miami, Ohio. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them in Dayton in the first four in one of those, 11 seed, 10 seed playing games. Do I think they deserve to be there? No, I think they probably should be a locked in, let's say 10 seed. But I don't know. Ever since we brought in quad one wins, quad two wins, things like that, we've seen evaluation change a lot, and it gives a lot smaller margin of errors to mid majors like Miami, Ohio, which, fair or unfair, has kind of been the precedent that we've seen set. Of course, there's that whole narrative around Auburn. The wheels kind of came off the bus for them during the end of SEC play. However, they do have a chance at beating a ranked Tennessee team today. I believe that game's going on right now. So I think that outcome can change things a little bit, right? Like if Auburn loses and it's a pretty convincing loss, I would feel more safe about Miami, Ohio. But as of right now, it's a little bit nervy.
Okay. You mentioned a game going on right now. I have a few other scores right here with me. Washington, who very much needs to get some work done in the Big Ten championship tournament to have a chance at the March Madness. They're down 13 right now to Wisconsin. There's about 8.5 minutes left in that game. So Huskies within striking distance, but they really need to get busy here. UCF and Arizona in the Big 12 championship, or Big 12 tournament, I should say. Arizona has not scored a point in the last 5 minutes of the first half. They are now at halftime. UCF closed the gap from being down over 20 points, so now it is a 16-point game, 46-30. So still a lot of work for the Knights, but Arizona finishes out the half very poorly. If UCF has some momentum in the second half, we could see an upset there, but I would still say that is a very large distance for a UCF team who has not looked the best at the end of the season to be able to make up. Arizona, obviously, very good team this year, probably a one seed unless they do slip up in a game like this. But we'll have to see. We're quarterfinals of most of these tournaments, so a lot can happen in these conference. Speaking of conference, we'll head over to the PAC-South. Obviously, baseball, the biggest thing of note was that New Mexico was not only the only team in our conference to start undefeated, they were one of the three final remaining between them, Southern Cal, and Texas. So pretty good company for baseball. Since that, they are on a 5-game losing streak and getting swept by Tarleton State. So not a bad baseball program, but also if you're trying to have the season you want to have, you don't really want to get swept there. So very unfortunate there. UNM has obviously lost their top spot in the conference just slightly. But then there is a 3-way tie between Duke, Florida State, and Florida for the top of the PAC-South Conference. So 3 very good ball clubs right there. UF kind of stuttering a little bit, getting the benefit of the doubt with some of the matchups they've had. We'll see what UF really has, and also other PAC-South members, South Carolina. They play this weekend in the first SEC tournament or SEC series for both of those teams. So we'll see what they have there and how the conference continues to evolve as all these teams are beginning their conference play. Women's basketball, that is down to a 2-horse race. It is South Carolina and Duke. South Carolina losing the SEC title game to Texas definitely hurts them a bit. They lost out on a lot of points there. Duke holding on somehow to Louisville. I really don't know how they were able to manage that game. I thought Louisville had them dead to rights, and they should have. They just could not close the deal in regulation. Overtime gives the title to the Blue Devils. Closes the gap a little bit now. So really only 2 teams left on the women's side of things. On the men's side, some of the same. We still have conference tournaments to finish up, so that could give a lot of points to these teams. Duke and Florida definitely our 2 hottest teams in the second half of the season. Duke throughout the entire season. that's kind of our title race at the top there. Our third place, though, well behind, but we have a 3-horse race there. We have Iowa State, UCF, and St. Louis. Obviously, just mentioned UCF playing Arizona right now. St. Louis sputtered at the end of their season, still got a share of their regular season conference title, can get the whole conference title. And Iowa State looked really good against Texas Tech this morning. I will give myself a breather and ask you, which of those 3 teams is going to be able to finish the end of the season and take that third place in the conference?
I think I'm gonna have to go with Iowa State here. Iowa State's kind of been a little inconsistent in some games in Big 12 play, but still they've been a top 10 team all season long. They blew out Texas Tech today, so assuming that result between Arizona and UCF stands, that'll give them the leg up on UCF there. And I don't know. Wait, sorry. Are we counting conference championship?
For the men's tournament, we haven't gotten that into their points yet. But yeah, conference championship and then March Madness. So, I mean, it's the whole season.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah. I like Iowa State the best out of those 3. I think this Iowa State team is, I shouldn't say sneaky good because they're a top 10 team, but sneaky good. You know, they've kind of flown under the radar a little bit in the Big 12 with obviously Arizona having a great year, Houston having a great year, Kansas with Darren Peterson obviously gaining a lot of national media attention. And I think this is a team that could easily make a Sweet 16, potential Elite 8, where I don't really see that in the cards for a team like UCF.
Okay. And then something I want to bring up to you, and then I'll let you play with it a bit more as well. So we kind of noticed in football that when you get down to the bottom of our conference, i.e., Oregon State and Charlotte, you no longer really have a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
You look over at men's basketball, bottom 3, South Carolina, Charlotte, and Central Michigan. I'm going to assume that these teams are probably losing their head coach. South Carolina sounds like they might retain, but that leaves the bottom 2, Charlotte and Central Michigan. Do you think that those 2 coaches, if not quietly already announced, will be finding a new job come next fall?
Yeah, I think so, especially with the case with Charlotte. This isn't like year 1 or year 2 of this, let's say, coaching cycle or coaching experience. I believe it's year 3. And they are not getting the results that they really, let's say, like want or are looking for. In the American, I don't really know why that is. Charlotte was a pretty good mid-major program when they were in the Atlantic 10. So it's kind of intriguing or interesting a little bit to see that. Like you said, South Carolina, though, has announced through the athletic department and Jeremiah Donati that Lamont Paris will be coming back for next season. They're not going to move on from him. They're not going to find a new coach. Allegedly, they're going to more heavily invest, let's say, in the men's team. So I don't know if that means taking funds away from the women's program or just raising more in NIL in general. But they are committing to increasing that, especially after the data came out this week that they were pretty comfortably the lowest roster spend in the SEC this season. And then you wonder why they were the 3rd or 4th worst team in the SEC. But kind of moving up, let's say, like our chain a little bit, Providence has announced that Kim English is not going to be back next year. And that's a program that I am super plugged into, growing up a Providence College fan in Rhode Island. Still have a lot of connections to the area, to the program, things like that. And I don't know, I'm excited for the direction of the program post Kim English. Of course, I really wanted Kim to succeed. He caught the program at one of its highest points in recent history. At the tail end of the Ed Cooley era, you know, you had consistent NCAA tournament appearances. You had the one deep run where you lost in the Sweet 16 to Kansas, who eventually won the national championship that year. And I don't know, it just kind of felt like Kim never really capitalized on that momentum. He recruited super, super well, but never really got those on court results that the school was looking for. So I think it'll be interesting to see who Providence hires, because obviously the Big East is a good basketball conference, but Big East schools don't exactly have the money of, let's say, a Kansas State or a Syracuse, right? Two bigger jobs that are open this coaching cycle. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised to see, like, let's say Josh Schertz or a big name like that go to Syracuse. I believe Jared Calhoun at Utah State is the top candidate or the preferred candidate for the Kansas State job. What I've kind of heard a decent amount regarding Providence College is that they're going to do, their due diligence, check in at least with Josh Schertz, check in with Jared Calhoun. If those names are available, obviously that'd be, a perfect outcome. But I wouldn't be surprised if USF's coach, Ryan Hodgson, has his name thrown around for the Providence College job. I wouldn't be surprised if the Merrimack coach, Joe Gallo, has his name thrown around a little bit for the job. And one I heard the other day that did surprise me a little bit, because it would be a really interesting transition from the West Coast to the East Coast, is Santa Clara's head coach. And I mean, Santa Clara's having a great season, right?
Very good season right now.
Herb Sendek's done a really, really nice job with them. But I was like, like usually Providence College hires regional guys who have connections recruiting wise in the Northeast or within the Big East footprint, let's say in general. But it just goes to show that in this NIL era, so much is changing in the shape of coaching. And if you can get a guy who's had success at a fellow mid-major, although I would say Providence is more of like a high major with the Big East membership, still, he can bring some guys who have had success at Santa Clara, and that helps with roster building and things like that. So I think it'll be really interesting to see the Providence job. Like we kind of mentioned in our conference, them, Charlotte, I anticipate Central Michigan will all be open moving forward. Like I kind of mentioned, obviously Syracuse and Kansas State are going to be open as well. And those are two really big jobs. Pitt will probably also open up. Cincinnati probably will also open up. So it should be a really interesting coaching cycle. Bobby Hurley got fired yesterday. Well, was not rehired or retained yesterday by Arizona State. So I don't know, a lot of moving pieces. The Arizona State job in particular, one name I would keep an eye on. I don't know how likely it is to happen, but because he has connections in the area, because he's had success at a fairly local school, Phoenix and Tempe aren't super far away, is Grand Canyon's Bryce Drew. He had success at Valparaiso. He's having success at Grand Canyon. He's made 2-3 tournament trips there. And yes, Vanderbilt was a total disaster, but you would think that Arizona State would make sure the right pieces are in place for it to not go that way for Bryce Drew.
Yeah, very interesting there. It'll be something to keep an eye on as well for any participants in the PAC-South Conference, kind of where that like death line say comes in for coaches, because there's definitely in the NIL era different circumstances as well. So South Carolina, bottom 3 of basketball. Providence, as it stands currently, is 5th, but of course teams can move quads, so wins that they already had could move them up, move them a little further down. So currently they're 5th. They're right above Notre Dame, who's bottom 4 there as well. So it should be interesting where it all shakes out. And then as we get more and more seasons under our belt, where these lines really are, because then we can kind of already begin to point before we even hit the end of the season or hit the cycle who's going to really be in the market or who probably will be in the market. So that'll be interesting to see. What else is interesting to see? How these tournaments are going to finish up. Great segue, TJ. We are on to the ACC first, and I feel like this, to me, is the most clear-cut answer. I'm going with Duke. to win the conference. Duke has just looked so good throughout the entire year. They've been battle tested time in and time out. One of their few losses came to a very good team on the road, and it's also their rival. So, like, when you have that having to be your losses, like, yes, it hurts from like a fan standpoint, but like the stars are aligning for them to lose. I mean, they are winning all the big games. They are looking good in these games. Uh, they're coming into this with still really good momentum. I literally drafted up last podcast how Duke could lose to the T, and they still won. So I love the Blue Devils. They are terrorizing the PAC-South Conference in every sport, and I think that the ACC, well, women's basketball as well, but men's basketball is going to go to the Blue Devils.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Duke is pretty comfortably the favorite in the ACC, especially with Caleb Wilson's injury. Granted, they have Caleb Foster, who's injured himself, but I still think that the depth and the talent on this team is enough to overcome that. And I won't say super comfortably, but fairly comfortably win the ACC this year. Um, I don't know. Look out, I guess, for Virginia. I feel like they could be maybe like that sneaky team that has a chance at a deeper run, right? Especially if they draw North Carolina instead of drawing Duke. But I do think, like you said, Duke is pretty comfortably the top dog in this conference, both in women's and men's basketball, it seems.
Yeah. Okay. On to the Big Ten then. I almost have a feeling that the Big Ten, this is the conference that will produce the national champion this year.
Ooh, bold.
There are so many good teams in it. I feel that top to bottom, this is probably the deepest conference. I think ACC has very good teams. I think the SEC has some very good teams. Big 12 as well. I just think as a whole, Big Ten, everyone coming out is going to be battle tested that make the dance. That being said, I like Illinois to take this tournament. I think the Illini are very strong. I think this is also going to have to take a little bit of luck on whoever comes out of the Big Ten, just catching one or two of these teams on a bad weekend. I mean, really, anyone could have a really good game, have a really bad game. That's kind of the beauty of March. I think the Big Ten as a conference is really going to embody that this year. I mean, I truly think that you have 4 teams in this conference that could win the national title. When you look at other conferences, there's maybe 1 or 2. But I like Illinois to get this tournament done.
Interesting. I'm kind of glad that you brought up that you think the Big Ten can win the Natty this year, because it seems like every year we talk about the Big Ten curse. With March Madness, the fact that it's been, at this point, if they don't win, 26 years, right, since we saw a Big Ten team win the national championship, Michigan State being the last one in 2000. But yeah, they're a super deep conference. There's a ton of teams that are super quality. Obviously, Purdue's kind of dropped off a little bit this year without Zach Edey. Year 2, I guess, without Zach Edey. But they're still a really good basketball team. Illinois, as you mentioned, is a phenomenal team. Nebraska's really talented. Michigan State's really talented. And we know how good Michigan is after really succeeding, I'll say, in the transfer market this past offseason.
Update Big Ten tournament as we're going, just in case this changes anything.
Yeah.
Washington has now brought it to 6 points.
Against
Little over 3 minutes left. So window's really, really closing.
Okay.
But it's there. So we could have an upset Wisconsin in this game as the 23rd ranked team in the country. You can continue.
I'm going to go. I don't know. My heart wants to say Michigan State, but they've been shaky at points this year, and they've lost to some teams that they should not have. Also, they were getting blown out in that Michigan game. Made a huge run, things like that. 4 points now, dang.
4-point game.
Washington coming out on fire. But I'm going to go with Michigan. I think they've been right there with Duke and Arizona as the three best teams in the country all
Indeed.
year long. So I'm going to go with the Wolverines to take care of it.
Okay. You mentioned Arizona. We're going to the Big 12. And that is who I have in the Big 12. I think Arizona, this team, or this conference, I should say, has a lot of good teams. Don't get me wrong. But they
Definitely.
have a lot of Jekyll and Hyde teams. You have someone like Texas Tech, who has been good throughout most of the year, but then they take a random loss to a UCF team. You have a UCF team who beats a really good Texas Tech and then turns around and loses to a Cincinnati. That was kind of the story for almost the entire conference play of the Big 12 outside of Arizona. And it's one of those cases where it's like, yeah, it seems like it's the obvious pick. And then, well, the answer is it is, in my opinion. So I think the Wildcats get it done in the Big 12 tournament.
Okay, I'm gonna not go chalk here. I've gone with the two top teams in the conference so far. So I'm gonna.
I am now realizing I tried to pick Azat, and yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing now too. Well,
Hey,
except
you
Illinois.
picked
Except
Illinois.
Illinois.
You picked Illinois. You got
Illinois. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, wait until my other picks.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna go with Iowa State. So
Okay.
I think this Iowa State team is obviously really talented. I think they're up to 7th in the latest poll. Um,
How huge was that Texas Tech game this morning?
yeah, that was massive. Big win against a quality opponent. They blew the doors off of Arizona State yesterday as well. So I think that they're playing confident, aggressive basketball right now, and that's why I think that they've got a shot against any team in this conference. And I'm backing them to take it home. Let's go. Let's go with the Cyclones here. Coach Otts gets it done, and Tommy Lloyd comes up short once again.
Okay. Before we move on to our next conference, there is 2 minutes remaining in the Washington-Wisconsin game, and it is now a 2-point. Wow, that was a big jump. Excuse me. 1 minute, 20 seconds remaining. It is 79-81 Wisconsin. So we're going to have ourselves a finish there in the Big Ten tournament. Yeah. On to the Big East as that continues play. I'm not really sold on this conference as a whole. I find that the top teams are quite inconsistent for what you want. I mean, UConn is very good, but as I mentioned in the podcast earlier in the season, this is not the UConn that we've seen the past couple years, and that kind of, I don't know, I feel like that really draws it away. Like, you have the recency bias of just how dominant that team has been, so much so that Hurley does not leave for the Lakers job because he wants to go for a 3P because he knew how good his team was. So, like, when you factor that stuff in, it's a different UConn team. St. John's, I really want them to be there, but I just still don't think that they're there. I think that we're going to have a big case of, like, the upsets in this tournament, and I think the team that's going to come out of that is going to be Villanova. I just don't think UConn or St. John's are going to get it done. I feel like part of them might know that in a way, and it's like, all right, this is the last chance that we can tune stuff up. If we're going to lose a game, this is when you lose it, because they're both getting into the tournament, and that's where you really need to shine. So I think Villanova wins by survival.
Interesting. I am gonna go with the top team here. Technically not chalk because they didn't win the conference in the regular season. But I'm going to go with UConn to win the Big East. I think they are, from a on paper standpoint, the most talented team in the conference. Obviously, St. John's, when they're rolling with Zuby Ejiofor and Bryce Hopkins, are extremely talented, but UConn did almost 30-piece them just a few weeks ago. So I've kind of got that in the back of my mind. Yes, St. John's beat UConn in the first matchup, so it's not like it's totally swayed in the Huskies' favor. But I do think that UConn, when it comes down to things, is the best team in the conference. I will say, though, one team to keep an eye on is going to be Seton Hall, because they have to play aggressive. They have to play hungry. if they want to make the NCAA tournament, right? Like, I mean, realistically, their best shot is to win the conference. Maybe there's an outside chance if they beat um, their Friday night opponent and make it to Saturday in the Big East Championship. They could have an outside chance at a bubble spot, but I mean, really, they kind of have to be a bid stealer to get in. So watch out for Seton Hall. It's a scrappy team. They've played pretty well against decent competition this year. They kept it close with UConn just a few weeks ago. But ultimately, I do like the Huskies.
Okay. UConn for the Big East with Pat. We are down to the final minute of play. Washington was shooting free throws. I believe they've only shot one. No, they shot both. It does appear. It is 80-81. We resume play out of a Wisconsin timeout. So a basket for the Badgers is huge here. Otherwise, Washington with the chance to take the lead. And we have a 9-foot jump shot. So 3-point game. Huskies have it. 49 seconds. We go to the SEC now. This conference, I again, kind of like the ACC. I think the top is really good. The bottom is the bottom. And there's one team that really, throughout the entire conference play, really stood out to me, and that was Florida. I mean, since Christmas, that team has been unconscious. You could probably argue even a little bit before then. I think that is one of the top 4 teams in the country. I think that we will see them in the Final Four. But I like the Gators. I think that they're going to continue their winning ways. They're going to get this tournament done, and they're going to have a deep run into March.
Yeah, I definitely think Florida, from a talent standpoint, from a who's like feeling right, who's feeling good standpoint, is kind of like the team in the SEC. Although, I don't know, I think they should match up well and win, but playing against a scrappy and hungry Kentucky team could be a little bit nervy for them, coming off just about a week's worth of rest, tomorrow night. Granted, they did just beat that Kentucky team last Saturday at Rupp by, I think, like 7 or 8. But still, you never know. I am going to deviate here as well, not go with Florida. I am actually going out on a bit of a risky pick here, given how poorly they played against Florida 2 weeks ago, and almost losing by 40 points. But I believe, or I guess closer to 30, but still, I believe in this team when they're clicking right. I think Darius Acuff is one of the, I'll say, best players, definitely in the SEC, but also one of the most fun players in the SEC to watch. I think Cal is a fantastic coach, hasn't really lost the fastball, and they do rebound quite well. So I'm going with Arkansas to win the SEC.
Okay.
WPS over here.
Nice little change and transition there. So yeah, we have a different champion in every conference except the ACC. I think that really goes to show how good Duke is this year. Virginia definitely kind of that, like, they shouldn't be a dark horse team, but how good Duke is, it kind of makes everyone else that you could pick a dark horse. And the injuries that has hit UNC has definitely hurt them as well. So yeah, it should be interesting. We have that wrapping up over the next couple days, and then we'll have Selection Sunday, and we'll be fully into the madness of March. Speaking of madness of March, it is a 1-point game again. 83-82 Huskies. They are fouling Wisconsin to take them to the line. And we have a timeout on the floor. So we will not see the end of this on the podcast. We will definitely follow it. And we hope that whoever is listening to this show, you also followed this game, because it looks like it wound up being a great finish in the Big Ten tournament. We'll be back next week to discuss kind of our Selection Sunday fallout, our champions, and then once again, our PAC-South standings. So for Pat, I'm TJ. Thank you all so much for watching and listening.